The winter wind howled through the empty streets, sharp and merciless like a blade against skin. Elena Marlowe tugged her thin coat tighter around her body, but the fabric was so worn out it hardly made a difference. Each gust of icy air cut straight through her clothes, burning her cheeks and numbing her fingers. Her shift at the diner had finally ended after 12 long hours. Her back ached, her shoes rubbed blisters into her feet, and her hands were red and raw from scrubbing dishes. She carried her tips in a little envelope inside her pocket, barely enough for the bus fare tomorrow and maybe a loaf of bread. Rent was late again. Mr. Connors, the landlord, had already knocked on her door twice this week. If she didn't pay soon, she knew what was coming. Another eviction notice. She hated this part of the city. The lights overhead flickered like they were ready to die, casting shadows that danced across the icy pavement. Trash rustled in the gutters. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed and then faded. Most people avoided walking here at night, but Elena didn't have much of a choice. Cutting through Franklin Avenue saved her almost 15 minutes, and 15 minutes meant she could reach her tiny room before her legs gave out. She lowered her head and walked faster, her breath puffing white into the night air. Then she almost tripped. At first she thought it was just a pile of garbage bags left against the wall of an abandoned store. But when her foot brushed against it, the shape moved. Not a bag. A body. Her heart jumped into her throat. "Hello," she whispered, hesitating. The figure was half hidden between a parked car and the brick wall. Elena crouched down, squinting in the dim light. That's when she noticed the details. Polished black leather shoes, a wool coat that looked expensive, neat trousers, and, most importantly, the slow, shallow rise and fall of a chest. "Oh my God," she muttered. "He's alive." She pulled back the coat's collar to see his face. A boy. No older than 14, maybe 15. His skin was pale, almost gray, and damp with sweat despite the freezing air. His lips trembled. He wasn't drunk. He wasn't a homeless man. He looked like someone out of a private school brochure, his uniform neat but wrinkled, a silk tie loosened at the collar. "Hey, can you hear me?" Elena asked, patting his cheek lightly. The boy didn't respond. His pulse was weak but steady when she touched his wrist. His skin felt cold and clammy, and she recognized the symptoms. Low blood sugar. She had studied it in nursing school before she dropped out temporarily to work more shifts. Looked like severe hypoglycemia. Elena's chest tightened. This boy needed help, and fast. She dug through his coat pockets, hoping for an ID, a wallet, anything. Instead, she found a sleek smartphone with a shining silver case. The kind of phone she could never dream of affording. The screen lit up under her shaking fingers. No lock code. Just one emergency contact saved. That. Her stomach sank. Just one word, no name. Elena hesitated. Whoever this man was, he clearly had money. The boy's shoes alone probably cost more than her rent. She didn't belong anywhere near this world. But the boy might not live long enough for her to argue with herself. She pressed the contact. The phone rang once. Twice. Then a deep voice answered. "Luca." The way the voice said the name, sharp, commanding but edged with fear, made Elena's hands tremble. This isn't Luca," she said quickly. "My name is Elena. I found a boy collapsed on Franklin Avenue near 23rd Street. He looks really sick. Is this his father's number?" Silence. Dead silence. She thought the call had dropped until she heard breathing. Fast, harsh, controlled. "Is he breathing?" The man's voice was hard as steel now. "Yes, but he's unconscious. I think it looks like hypoglycemia. Low blood sugar. I studied nursing. He needs. Do not move him. Do not call anyone else," the man ordered, voice suddenly sharp, almost threatening. "I'm 10 minutes away. Stay exactly where you are. Keep him warm." The line went dead. Elena stared at the phone, her heart hammering. Who was this man? What kind of father gave orders like that instead of panicking? And why did his voice carry so much weight, like every word was a command you couldn't disobey? She tucked the phone back into Luca's pocket, removed her own coat, and wrapped it around the boy's small body despite the cold gnawing at her bones. For a moment the silence of the street pressed down heavier than before. She whispered to the boy softly. "Hold on, okay? Your dad's coming. Just, hold on." Minutes stretched. Her fingers stung. She was about to lose hope when the low purr of an engine broke through the quiet. A black SUV glided down the street, headlights dimmed, windows tinted. It stopped right in front of her. The doors opened in perfect sync. Two men in dark coats stepped out, scanning the street like soldiers. The third emerged slower, his presence making Elena freeze. Broad-shouldered, dressed in a tailored black overcoat. His features sharp, chiseled, and severe. His eyes, dark as midnight, locked on her like a predator assessing prey. Even from a distance, Elena could sense the authority radiating off him. And under his coat she glimpsed the outline of something heavy at his side. A gun. He approached. Elena Marlowe? His voice was low, smooth, but every syllable carried danger. She swallowed hard. Yes. I called you. Your son. The man knelt beside the boy without another word. His movements were calm, practiced. He pulled out a small kit from his coat pocket, prepared a syringe and injected it into Luca's arm with the skill of someone who had done it many times. The boy stirred. His lips moved weakly. Dad. Relief flickered across the man's face, softening it for half a second. You forgot your kit again, the man murmured almost to himself. We will talk about this later. Elena stood awkwardly, shivering without her coat. She wanted to step away, to leave before this strange man even noticed her again. But when she took a step back, his voice stopped her cold. Wait. She froze. The man turned his gaze on her. His eyes were sharp, analyzing every detail of her. Her cheap shoes, her worn-out uniform, her exhausted face. You helped my son. Elena shook her head quickly. Anyone would have. No, he said firmly. Not here. Not at this hour. He reached into his pocket and Elena instinctively stepped back. I don't need money, she said sharply, defensive. A flicker of amusement touched his lips. Not money. He held out a thick, silver-embossed card. Nothing but a number printed across it. An opportunity, he said. Call this number tomorrow morning. I have a proposition for someone with your instincts. And before she could say anything, the man lifted his son into his arms like he weighed nothing, guided him into the SUV and vanished into the night. Elena was left standing alone, coatless, staring at the card that suddenly felt heavier than stone in her hand. Elena hardly slept that night. She sat on the edge of her bed in her tiny, drafty apartment, staring at the silver card on the nightstand. It seemed to glow faintly in the dark, daring her to pick it up. Her mind wouldn't stop racing. Who was that man? He wasn't just a father. No ordinary father arrived with armed men in black SUVs. No ordinary father carried syringes in his coat and gave orders like a commander. The name the voice had said over the phone echoed in her mind. Luca. And that man. Dante Moretti. She had heard the name before. People whispered it at the diner sometimes, always low, always careful. She didn't know the details, but she knew enough. Powerful, rich, dangerous. The kind of man you never wanted to owe a favor. But she also remembered his eyes when he looked at his son. That flicker of fear. The relief. That was real. By dawn, her decision was made. She couldn't ignore the card. She needed the chance. Her hands trembled as she dialed the number. The phone barely rang once before a woman's crisp, professional voice answered. Elena Marlowe? Yes. You are expected at 11 a.m. today. Dress appropriately. The driver will collect you from your address. The line went dead. Elena stared at the phone in shock. She hadn't given them her name. Or her address. At precisely 11, a sleek black car pulled up outside her building. The driver, dressed in a black suit, stepped out and opened the door without a word. Elena sat inside, her stomach twisting with nerves. The city blurred past the tinted windows as they drove toward the affluent district. The buildings grew taller, cleaner. The streets quieter. Finally, the car stopped before massive iron gates. Beyond them loomed a mansion, grand, imposing, with manicured gardens and tall marble columns. Elena had never seen anything like it. The gates opened silently, the car rolled forward, and her throat tightened. The Moretti estate. Inside, she was guided into a vast study lined with shelves of leather-bound books. Heavy curtains framed tall windows, and a massive antique desk dominated the room. Dante Moretti was waiting. He stood by the window, his hands behind his back, the morning light outlining the sharp angles of his face. He turned as she entered, his gaze locking on her with the same intensity as last night. Elena Marlowe, he said. Thank you for coming. Her voice almost caught, but she managed. I didn't have much choice. A flicker of amusement passed over his lips. You have more choice than most who step into this house, Dante replied. Sit. She sat on the edge of the leather chair, feeling small in the vast room. Luca has a rare and volatile form of type 1 diabetes, Dante began, his voice steady. His health requires constant monitoring. His last nurse left recently. I need someone competent, discreet, loyal. Elena blinked. You want me to be, what exactly? His nurse. His babysitter. Medical companion, Dante corrected. You would live here. Stay with him. Monitor him at school, at events, everywhere. You would keep him alive. He almost choked. Live here? Yes. He said it like a command, not a request. And if I say no? Dante tilted his head, studying her. Then you return to your diner job. Struggling for rent. Wondering every day if your neighbor will be alive when you come home. Her heart skipped. The way he said it, he knew everything. About her life. Her struggles. She hated how much she wanted to say yes. And if I say yes, she asked carefully, then you gain stability, purpose, and protection. His eyes locked onto hers, dark and unyielding. But once you step into this house, Elena, there is no turning back. Do you understand? Her throat tightened. She understood perfectly. The door suddenly burst open. Dad, no. It was Luca. Pale but standing, his voice sharp with teenage defiance. I don't need a babysitter, he shouted. I had one bad episode. Well, you can't just. You've had 3 this month, Dante cut in, his voice like ice. And last night would have killed you if not for Miss Marlowe. This is not negotiable. Luca glared at Elena as if this was all her fault. Dante's eyes softened just a fraction. Miss Marlowe is not a babysitter. She's my assistant. And she will keep you alive. The boy stormed out, slamming the door. Silence fell heavy. Dante turned back to Elena. The decision is yours. But make it now. Elena's hands trembled in her lap. She thought of her freezing apartment. Her overdue rent. Her dream of finishing nursing school. And the boy she'd found in the street, so close to dying. She took a deep breath. I'll do it. Dante's lips curved ever so slightly, not quite a smile but close. Good. The study doors closed behind Elena with a low thud. Her decision was made, though her stomach twisted with doubt. Dante Moretti's words echoed in her head. Once you step into this house, there is no turning back. For the rest of the day she felt as though she was drifting. Staff came and went. Quiet, efficient, moving with practiced rhythm. They all glanced at her but said little. Some wore plain clothes, others crisp uniforms, and a few had the watchful eyes of men trained to see threats before they happened. Elena had grown up around exhaustion, not discipline. This house was nothing like the messy diner or her cramped apartment. Everything here felt precise, controlled. At one point, Isabella Rossi, the housekeeper, approached her with a soft smile. Come. You need food. Elena followed her into a gleaming kitchen larger than her entire apartment. The smell of fresh bread and herbs hung in the air. A pot simmered quietly on the stove. Isabella was gentle, motherly, her silver-streaked hair tied back neatly. She placed a bowl of soup in front of Elena. You look pale, Isabella said kindly. Eat. You'll need strength if you stay here. Elena tried to smile. Thank you. It's been a strange day. Strange is normal in this house, Isabella replied softly. Before Elena could ask what she meant, a shadow moved in the doorway. Dante Moretti stood there. Even in his own home, he wore the tailored overcoat and dark suit, as if he were always ready for war or business, or both. He looked at her, then at Isabella, and gave a small nod. The housekeeper retreated, leaving them alone. Elena's spoon froze halfway to her lips. You're quiet, Dante said, his tone calm but heavy. He stepped closer, every movement deliberate. I can see you're unsettled. Elena swallowed. It's not every day we agree to move into a stranger's mansion. Not a stranger, Dante corrected. A protector. The words made her bristle. Protector? You don't even know me. I know enough, he said simply. You worked 2 jobs to keep yourself afloat. You studied nursing but sacrificed it for survival. You don't quit when things get hard. And last night, you wrapped your coat around a boy you didn't know, even while you froze yourself. Elena blinked. He said it like he had been there watching. You had me followed? She asked sharply. His eyes didn't waver. I don't gamble with unknowns. Anyone near Luca is watched. The realization hit her like ice. She wasn't here because of luck. He had studied her, measured her, and chosen her. Elena set her spoon down with trembling fingers. So this isn't about my nursing skills. It's about loyalty. About whether you can own me. A flicker of amusement ghosted across Dante's face. I don't own people, Miss Marlowe. I invest in them. The weak accept chains. The strong understand alliances. The weight of his words settled heavy in the air. Then for the first time she saw something shift in his expression. Something human. His eyes darkened and his voice dropped lower. Luca's mother was murdered because she was seen as my weakness. I won't let that happen again. The silence stretched. Elena's chest ached at the cold honesty in his tone. Finally, Dante straightened, the emotion gone as quickly as it appeared. Tomorrow morning you'll begin. Isabella will help you settle in. Marco will handle your security clearance. He turned and walked away, leaving her with more questions than answers. But one thing was certain. Dante Moretti wasn't just a wealthy man. He was dangerous. And she was now part of his world. The next morning, Elena awoke in a room that didn't feel real. Her new bedroom in the east wing of the mansion had a bed so soft she had sunk into it like a cloud. The curtains were thick velvet, the rug under her bare feet plush and warm. Her old life, the squeaky mattress, the leaking pipes, the buzzing neon light outside her window, felt like another lifetime. Yet she couldn't relax. The silence was too deep. The wealth was too much. It all felt like a gilded cage. She washed, dressed, and followed Isabella down a long hallway. Luca will resist you, Isabella warned kindly as they walked. Don't take it personally. He is his father's son. Stubborn. Proud. But he needs someone who sees him as more than a piece in a game. What game? Elena asked. Isabella gave her a look. You know already. Don't ask questions you don't want answered. They stopped at a door. Isabella knocked once, then pushed it open. Inside was Luca Moretti. He sat on his bed, scrolling through his phone, his expression already sour when he saw Elena. His cheeks still held a faint pallor from his collapse, but his eyes burned with sharp defiance. Oh great, he muttered. The babysitter. Elena crossed her arms. I'm not your babysitter. Right, he said dryly. You just happen to live here now. To watch me. To follow me. Sounds different. Elena resisted the urge to roll her eyes. Look, I didn't ask for this either. But I found you in the street, remember? I saved your life. You can at least not treat me like I ruined it. Luca's jaw tightened and for a moment she saw something beneath the anger. Fear. I don't want someone hovering over me, he snapped. I just want to live normal. You think collapsing in the snow is normal? Elena shot back, her tone sharper now. Do you think your father would have gotten to you in time without me? Because from where I was sitting, you were minutes away from slipping too far. Luca looked away. His silence said more than his words. Elena softened slightly. She pulled out a glucose monitor from the kit Isabella had handed her. Look, I don't want to make your life harder, she said, quieter now. But your body isn't forgiving. You push it, it'll push back harder. You don't have to like me. But we're stuck together. So let's figure this out. For the first time, Luca didn't argue. He held out his hand reluctantly for the monitor. The door creaked open. Dante stood there watching. His eyes flicked to Elena, then to Luca, then back. He said nothing, but something in his expression softened. Approval, maybe. Elena, he said finally. Come with me. She followed him down the hall, her heart pounding. He led her into the same study as yesterday. The curtains were drawn this time, the room dim except for the glow of a single lamp. On the desk was a folder. Dante slid it toward her. Inside were details of her life. Her school records. Work history. Even the eviction notices she had tried so hard to forget. Elena's stomach turned. You had no right. I had every right, Dante interrupted smoothly. I don't bring anyone near my son without knowing everything. Her hands trembled. You think this makes you powerful? Having my secrets. Dante's gaze locked onto hers. No. It makes you vulnerable. And that vulnerability is now mine to protect. Or to destroy. Which do you think I prefer? Elena's chest tightened. She hated him in that moment, hated how he cornered her with truth instead of lies. But beneath it all, there was something terrifyingly honest about him. Finally she whispered, "Why me? You could have anyone. A professional nurse. Someone trained. Someone richer." Dante leaned forward, his voice low and unyielding. "Because they don't stop for strangers on the street. You did. And that, Elena Marlowe, is worth more than any degree or polished resume. It means when the moment comes you won't hesitate. And I need someone like that." The room fell silent. Elena stared at the folder. Then at the man who had just bound her to his world with invisible chains. Her future was no longer hers. It was his. The black iron gates of the Moretti estate swung open with a low groan, smooth as clockwork, the metal gliding like a machine too well-oiled to ever falter. Elena sat in the back seat of the sleek car that had been sent to collect her belongings. She pressed her palms against her knees, trying to steady herself. She hadn't brought much. A single suitcase. A worn backpack. Her whole life could fit into the trunk of one of Dante Moretti's cars, and that truth gnawed at her. The car rolled up the long driveway, lined with hedges trimmed so neatly they looked unnatural. At the end, the mansion rose like a fortress, limestone walls gleaming pale against the gray sky. It wasn't just a house, it was a statement. Money. Power. Untouchability. As the car came to a stop, the driver stepped out and opened her door without a word. Elena gripped her suitcase and followed him, the gravel crunching under her shoes. Her heart hammered. She had crossed the point of no return. Isabella Rossi, the housekeeper, met her at the door. "Welcome back," Isabella said gently, her tone warmer than Elena expected. "Come. I'll show you to your rooms." "Pie rooms?" Elena asked, startled. Isabella smiled faintly. "You didn't think you'd be squeezed into a servant's quarters, did you? Mr. Moretti has arranged a suite for you in the East Wing." They climbed the grand staircase, its polished wood gleaming under the chandelier's glow. Elena's breath caught as they passed portraits of stern men and elegant women, generations of Morettas staring down at her like silent judges. Her suite was larger than her entire apartment. A bedroom with a canopy bed, soft rugs, a sitting area with tall windows overlooking the gardens. A private bathroom with marble counters. It was too much. Elena set her suitcase down, feeling out of place, like a stray cat that had wandered into a palace. Isabella studied her quietly. "This feels wrong to you, doesn't it?" Elena hesitated, then nodded. "It feels like I don't belong." "None of us truly belong here," Isabella said softly. "Not even him if you want the truth. But we serve. And in our service we survive." Before Elena could ask what she meant, the door opened. Dante Moretti stood there, filling the frame. His dark eyes swept the room, then landed on her. "You're settled?" he asked. "Trying to be," Elena said carefully. "Good." His voice carried no warmth, only command. "Come with me. There is something you need to see." She followed him down the hall, her steps echoing against marble. He led her through a heavy oak door into a room Elena hadn't noticed before. It was smaller than his study but colder. The walls were lined with screens displaying camera feeds of the estate. Security maps, flashing red points, routes of guards patrolling the grounds. "This is the control room," Dante said. "Everything that happens here I see. Every person who enters I know. Remember that." Elena swallowed. "You're saying I'm being watched?" Dante turned his gaze on her. "I'm saying you are safe. No one touches what belongs to me." The word struck her like a blow. Belongs. Was that what she was now? She opened her mouth to argue, but his phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at it, then slipped it away. "You'll start with Luca tomorrow," he said, already walking toward the door. "Learn his rhythms. Learn his habits. Learn what keeps him alive. Fail and you won't answer to me, you'll answer to yourself when you watch him die." The words were harsh, but beneath them Elena sensed something deeper. Fear. And for the first time she realized Dante Moretti's fortress of stone and steel wasn't built to show power. It was built to hide weakness. The next morning, Elena found Luca in the kitchen, shoving a piece of toast into his mouth while scrolling on his phone. He barely glanced at her. "Here comes the babysitter," he muttered under his breath. Elena dropped her bag on the counter. Good morning to you too. He smirked but didn't look up. She poured herself a glass of water and sat across from him. All right. Let's get this out of the way. I'm not here to spy on you. I'm here to keep you alive. You don't like it? Fine. But you're stuck with me. Luca finally looked up, his brown eyes sharp. You don't get it. I don't need saving. I don't need some stranger shadowing me all day. Elena leaned forward. Do you remember last week? Collapsing in the street? Because I do. You'd be dead if I hadn't found you. That silenced him. His jaw tightened but he didn't speak. Elena softened her tone. I'm not here to take away your freedom. I just want to make sure you live long enough to enjoy it. For a moment Luca's bravado cracked. His shoulders slumped slightly, the fight draining out of him. Normal kids don't have people following them everywhere, he muttered. They don't have to hide medical kits in their backpacks like contraband. Elena's chest tightened. You're right. It's not fair. But normal kids don't have your father either. That made him laugh bitterly. You mean the King of Shadows? Yeah, he's real comforting. Elena tilted her head. You don't think he cares about you? Luca hesitated. For a moment pain flickered in his eyes. Then he masked it with a shrug. He cares. But he cares like a general cares about a soldier. Keep him alive, keep the army strong. That's all. Elena studied him. There was more truth in that than she wanted to admit. Before she could reply, Dante entered the kitchen. His presence filled the space instantly, like the air itself thickened. Luca stiffened, shoving his phone into his pocket. I'm fine, he said quickly. Dante's eyes shifted to Elena. How is he? She held his gaze. Stable. But he needs routine. And less stress. Dante's jaw clenched. Stress is unavoidable in this family. Then teach him to manage it, Elena said before she could stop herself. The silence that followed was heavy. Dante's dark eyes bored into her, sharp and unblinking. Most people would have folded under that gaze. Elena forced herself to stay still. Finally, to her shock, his lips curved just slightly. You speak boldly, he said. Good. Luca doesn't need another servant. He needs someone who won't flinch. He turned and left as quickly as he'd come, leaving the room quieter but heavier. Luca exhaled slowly. Welcome to the circus, he muttered. Elena sipped her water, her heart still racing. The circus, she thought grimly, had only just begun. Elena's second week in the Moretti mansion felt like living inside a gilded labyrinth. The days fell into a rhythm she wasn't used to. Breakfast in the cavernous dining room, shadowing Luca to classes and practice, making sure his glucose levels stayed steady, late evenings checking his monitor while he sulked or complained. But it wasn't just the routine. It was the rules. Some rooms were open to her, some were not. Some halls buzzed with activity, others stayed strangely silent. The east wing, where her suite was, felt almost ordinary compared to the locked doors she passed in the west wing. Heavy doors with electronic panels. Men stationed nearby who didn't look like butlers or gardeners but soldiers waiting for orders. She asked Isabella Rossi about it once while folding laundry in the linen room. Why are so many doors locked in this house? Elena asked casually, trying to sound more curious than suspicious. Isabella's hands stilled on the sheet she was smoothing. Her eyes flicked up, calm but edged with warning. In this house, curiosity is dangerous. That's not an answer, Elena said quietly. It's the only one I will give you. Isabella folded the sheet with precise care and placed it on the stack. Then softer she added, remember this, Elena. You are here for Luca. If you keep your eyes on him you'll be safe. If you wander where you shouldn't, no one, not even Mr. Moretti, can guarantee your safety. Elena swallowed the questions on her tongue. That evening she sat with Luca in the kitchen while he half-heartedly did his homework. He sprawled across the table, pencil tapping rhythmically as he complained about biology. Do you ever use the word mitochondria in real life? He grumbled. Elena smiled faintly. You might if you go into medicine. I'm not going into medicine, Luca shot back. I'm going into whatever doesn't make me sit in this house with bodyguards breathing down my neck. Elena checked his monitor and recorded the number. Your dad's strict because he worries about you. Luca laughed bitterly. My dad's strict because control is the only language he speaks. Worry? That's not in his dictionary. Is that really what you think? She asked softly. It's what I know, Luca replied, but his voice wavered. The kitchen door creaked and Marco Velez, one of the security men, stepped in. He poured himself coffee like he owned the place. You don't ask questions in this house, Marco said suddenly, glancing at Elena. She froze. Excuse me. Marco sipped his coffee, eyes steady on her. I saw you near the West Wing earlier. That's not your business. Don't make it your business. Luca gave Elena a sharp look, almost protective for once. Don't mess with them, he muttered after Marco left. The West Wing isn't for people like us. Like us? Elena asked. Civilians, Luca said. He smirked humorlessly. You think this is just some rich guy's house? It's not. It's a kingdom. And my dad's the king. Kings don't tell their soldiers everything. And soldiers don't tell the servants anything. The words sank deep. Elena wanted to ask more, but Luca suddenly leaned closer. Look, if you want to last here, I'll give you one piece of advice. Don't listen at doors, don't follow footsteps, don't peek where you're not invited. Pretend this is just about my diabetes, or you'll end up regretting it. His voice carried a gravity she hadn't heard from him before. And Elena, staring at the dimly lit hallways beyond the kitchen, realized the boy wasn't exaggerating. The mansion was beautiful. But it was also a cage filled with secrets that breathed in the walls. 3 nights later, Elena learned the name that would haunt her dreams. It was late, past midnight, when she returned from checking on Luca. His monitor was steady, his breathing even, his face finally peaceful in sleep. She exhaled, relieved, and decided to grab a glass of water from the kitchen before bed. The house was quiet at night, eerily so. Footsteps echoed too loudly. Shadows stretched across the long halls. She passed the security room, the low hum of screens and radios seeping through the door. As she stepped into the kitchen, voices drifted from the far corner. 2 of the guards speaking in hushed tones. Shipment got delayed at the harbor, one said. The Salvatores won't like it, the other replied. Elena froze, her hand still on the cabinet handle. Victor's already looking for an excuse, the first guard continued. If he finds out about Luca's condition, he'll use it. You know how he is. Her stomach dropped. Luca's condition? She backed away before they could see her, her heart hammering. Later, in the dim glow of Luca's nightlight, she sat on the chair beside his bed. She couldn't shake the conversation. She couldn't ignore the name. Victor Salvatore. The next morning, as she helped Luca check his levels before school, she asked carefully, Luca, who are the Salvatores? Luca's hand jerked, nearly dropping the lancet. He stared at her, eyes sharp with warning. Don't, he said flatly. Don't what? Elena pressed. Don't ask questions like that. Not here. Not anywhere. You don't know them and you don't want to. But the guards were talking. Stop. His voice was firm, older than his years. You think you're safe because you're in this house? You're not. Safety here isn't about locked gates or cameras. It's about silence. If you talk about the Salvatores, if you even say their name too much, people will start wondering what you know. And once they wonder, they'll make sure you can't talk at all. The words chilled her blood. She wanted to argue, to say she deserved to know the truth. But the look in Luca's eyes stopped her. It wasn't just fear, it was experience. You're just here for me, Luca whispered. That's it. So, don't make the mistake of thinking you're part of his world. But Elena knew deep down she already was. The spring morning was deceptively bright, the sun hanging low above the city like a promise of warmth that never quite reached the streets. Elena sat in the back seat of the black SUV, Luca beside her, slouched with headphones in his ears. They were on their way to the Museum of Natural History. Luca's school had arranged the field trip, and Dante insisted she go with him. Marco Velez was driving, a man of few words and sharp eyes. Luca had been sulking since breakfast. You realize this is humiliating, right? He muttered, pulling one headphone out. Other kids go on field trips with sack lunches. I get an armored SUV and a nurse shadow. Elena glanced at him. Would you rather collapse in front of the T-Rex skeleton? He made a face but didn't answer. The SUV stopped at a red light. Elena absent-mindedly glanced in the side mirror and froze. A black sedan lingered 3 cars behind them. Dark-tinted windows, glossy paint. Nothing unusual maybe, but something about it made her skin crawl. She watched as the light turned green. The sedan stayed in perfect rhythm with them, neither too close nor too far. Through 2 more turns it held steady. Her stomach dropped. "Marco," she said carefully. "We've got a tail. Black Audi. 3 cars back." Marco's eyes flicked to the mirror. His jaw tightened. He didn't ask how she noticed, he just nodded, his grip on the wheel firming. Luca pulled out his earbuds, alarm flashing across his face. "Again," he muttered. Elena turned to him. "Again? What do you mean, again?" "This isn't the first time," Luca said quietly. "Dad has rivals who like to remind him they're watching." Her chest tightened. "You mean the Salvatores?" Luca's expression went pale. "I told you not to say their name." Before Elena could reply, Marco's phone buzzed. He answered in clipped Italian, his voice low but urgent. Moments later, 2 unmarked SUVs appeared in their mirrors, sliding into position behind the black sedan. The message was clear. By the time they reached the museum gates, the sedan had vanished. But Elena's heart kept racing long after. When they returned to the estate that evening, Dante was waiting in his study. Screens glowed behind him, showing camera feeds of the day's events. He replayed one, pausing on the moment Elena had turned her head in the mirror. "You noticed immediately," Dante said, his tone unreadable. Elena swallowed. "It was instinct. My neighborhood wasn't safe growing up. You learn to feel when you're being followed." His dark eyes studied her, something flickering there she couldn't name. Approval maybe. Or calculation. "Most people would have missed it," he said finally. "I'm not most people," Elena replied before she could stop herself. Silence stretched. Then unexpectedly the corner of his mouth curved. Almost a smile, though colder. "No," he agreed. "You're not." 3 days later, a knock came at Elena's door. When she opened it, Isabella Rossi stood there with a large garment bag draped over her arms. "This is for you," Isabella said softly, handing it over. Elena frowned. "What is it?" "A gown. Mr. Moretti wants you at the gala this weekend." Elena blinked. "A gala? As in, ball gowns, chandeliers, the elite." Isabella's lips curved. "Yes. And wolves in silk suits." Later alone, Elena unzipped the bag. The gown spilled out in shimmering folds of deep emerald silk. She touched it carefully, afraid the fabric might slip through her fingers like water. It probably cost more than her tuition. A note slipped from the pocket. In Dante's precise handwriting. "For the gala. The Salvatores will be watching everything, including appearances." Her stomach twisted. The night of the gala arrived. The Moretti car glided to a stop outside the Salvatore estate, which rivaled Dante's in grandeur. Crystal chandeliers gleamed through tall windows, and the driveway was lined with the sleekest cars Elena had ever seen. Her gown fit like a second skin, the emerald silk making her eyes brighter, her exhaustion less visible. But she felt out of place, painfully aware of every calculating gaze as she stepped out of the car. Dante offered his arm, his face composed. Luca trailed behind, his expression sour but anxious. Inside, the ballroom glittered with gold and glass. Men in tailored suits, women in diamonds. But beneath the glamour, Elena felt it. The weight of predators circling, every conversation laced with hidden meanings. Victor Salvatore appeared during dinner, his smile thin, his eyes colder than the wine in his glass. "And who is this lovely young woman?" he asked smoothly, his gaze lingering on Elena. Dante placed a hand at the small of her back. "Elena Marlowe. My personal assistant. She is studying nursing while managing my household affairs." The words were smooth, practiced. But the hand at her back was heavy, almost protective. Victor's eyes glinted with interest. Too much interest. The evening dragged on in a haze of music and conversation. Elena kept Luca close, her senses alert. She noticed the way Victor watched Dante, the way his men hovered at the edges, measuring, calculating. Then she noticed something else. Luca's hands trembling slightly as he reached for his glass. Her stomach dropped. "Luca," she whispered, leaning close. "Check your monitor." He obeyed reluctantly. The numbers flashed, dangerously low. "Stress," Elena muttered. "Adrenaline burns through glucose faster. We need to move. Now." Keeping her voice calm, she said to Dante, "Nicholas needs air. We'll step onto the terrace." They barely made it outside before Luca's knees buckled. Elena caught him, pulling his emergency kit from her clutch. She worked quickly, sliding glucose gel inside his cheek, monitoring his pulse. Dante appeared beside them, his calm facade cracking, fear flickering in his eyes. "What happened?" he demanded. "Stress-induced crash," Elena explained, focused on Luca. "He'll recover, but his body's burning sugar faster than usual." As Luca's color slowly returned, Elena became aware of a shadow at the terrace doors. Victor Salvatore. Watching with undisguised interest. Their eyes met. His smile was slow, dangerous before he slipped back into the ballroom. Elena's stomach churned with dread. He had seen everything. "Dante," she whispered. "He knows." Dante's jaw hardened, his eyes going dark. He stood, his presence radiating danger. "Get Luca to the car," he ordered coldly. "I need a word with our host before we leave." And in that moment, Elena realized the gala wasn't about wine and music. It was about power. And she had just witnessed the first move in a dangerous game. The orchestra swelled inside the Salvatore ballroom, violins fluttering beneath the glow of 1,000 lights. The room was a theater and everyone inside played their part. Elena stood near Luca, keeping her hand lightly on his arm as he steadied himself after his glucose crash. He was pale but recovering, his monitor beeping softly in her clutch bag. Dante returned from his word with Victor, his jaw tight, his face unreadable. He looked at Elena once, his gaze sharp, then at Luca. Without saying a word, he gestured for them to rejoin the crowd. The gala continued, but Elena's nerves stayed tight as a wire. Everywhere she looked, she felt eyes following them. She realized something chilling. Every conversation was a weapon. Every smile was a blade. Victor Salvatore approached again, this time with his wife on his arm. She was tall, elegant, draped in diamonds that glittered under the chandeliers. Her smile was warm, but her eyes held the same cold glint as her husband's. "Mr. Moretti," she purred, her voice like silk stretched too thin. "You disappear and suddenly the entire gala loses its charm." Dante's lips curved faintly. "I doubt I'm so important, Signora Salvatore. This evening is your husband's triumph." Victor's gaze slid to Luca, lingering just a moment too long. "And you've brought your heir," he said smoothly. "How wonderful to see young blood taking interest in such refined gatherings." Luca bristled, but Dante's hand on his shoulder kept him still. Victor turned to Elena, his smile widening. "And of course the newest addition to your household. Miss Marlowe, was it? How refreshing. A nurse with such presence." Elena's chest tightened. She forced herself to smile politely. "I'm just doing my job, Mr. Salvatore." "Ah," Victor said, his tone dripping with false charm. "But jobs can be such interesting things. Some are for money, some for loyalty. Some," his eyes flicked to Dante, sharp as a knife, "for survival." The moment stretched, heavy and suffocating. Then the orchestra struck a louder note, breaking the tension. "Enjoy your evening," Victor said smoothly, guiding his wife away. Luca let out a shaky breath. "He knows." "Yes," Dante said softly, his voice like iron. "He knows." The rest of the gala passed in a blur. Elena stayed close to Luca, her senses sharp, every conversation around them tinged with double meanings. She caught phrases like alliances, ports, shipments, words that meant nothing to her, yet carried weight that made her stomach churn. At one point, as couples took to the dance floor, Dante leaned close to her. His breath brushed her ear, his words low enough that only she could hear. "Do not let him see fear. In this world, fear is blood in the water." She nodded, her palms damp, her heart thundering. By the time they left, Elena felt drained, as though she had walked through a battlefield disguised as a ballroom. As the car pulled away from the estate, Luca fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted. Dante sat beside him, silent, his phone in his hand but untouched. Elena looked at him in the dim glow of the passing streetlights. "He's going to use it, isn't he?" Luca's condition. Dante's eyes met hers, dark and unyielding. "Yes. He'll spread it. Position it as a weakness. Use it as leverage. And you can't hide it anymore," Elena whispered. His jaw tightened. "No. And hiding has never been my way." He looked out the window, his reflection hard as steel in the glass. "If Victor thinks he has found my weakness, then he has signed his own death warrant." Elena shivered, not from the cold, but from the realization that tonight was only the beginning. The Moretti mansion was quiet when they returned, but it was not peace. It was the silence before a storm. Elena helped Luca to his room, settling him into bed. His breathing evened out quickly, exhaustion pulling him under. She lingered for a moment, brushing the damp hair from his forehead, before stepping out into the hall. Dante was waiting for her. "Come," he said simply, leading her back to his study. Inside, the atmosphere was thick. Maps and papers lay across his desk, his phone buzzing intermittently with messages he ignored. He paced like a caged animal, every movement precise but dangerous. Elena stood by the chair, unsure if she should sit. "You've spent years hiding Luca's condition, haven't you?" she asked finally. "Not just for his privacy, but because in your world, any vulnerability can be exploited." Dante stopped pacing. His eyes met hers, and for the first time she saw something raw behind them. "My wife was killed because she was seen as my weakness," he said quietly. "I will not let that happen to my son." The admission hung heavy in the room. Elena felt the weight of it press against her chest. Before she could respond, the study doors burst open. It was unusual. No one entered without permission. One of Dante's security men stepped in, urgency in his voice. "Sir, confirmation. Salvatore's men were seen near Miss Marlowe's old apartment building. They've been asking questions." Elena's blood ran cold. "By old neighbors?" "Yes," the man said grimly. "They're investigating her background." Dante's face darkened. "Of course," he muttered. "He will dig into anyone connected to me now." Elena's chest tightened, panic rising. She thought of Mrs. Clara D'Souza watering her plants, of the diner owner who'd saved her job, of her study group at the college library. Innocent people. People who had nothing to do with this world. "Why would they care about me?" she whispered. "Because you're in my orbit," Dante said, his voice sharp but not unkind. "And Victor will use any piece he can find. Leverage is his favorite weapon." Elena gripped the edge of the chair, her hands trembling. "Then they're in danger because of me." Dante stepped closer, his presence overwhelming, his voice low but firm. "No. They're in danger because of me. This is the cost of standing at my side." Her breath caught. "So what happens now?" Dante's eyes softened slightly, though his tone stayed firm. "You have two choices. Leave. Take money, disappear, finish your degree somewhere far from here. Or stay. And if you stay, I will extend my protection to those you care about." Elena's throat tightened. He was offering her freedom, but she knew it wasn't real. She couldn't walk away, not after everything. Not after Luca. "That's not really a choice," she whispered. "You know I won't abandon him." For the first time, Dante's expression flickered. Not triumph, not victory, but something almost like relief. "Then you understand," he said. The weight of her decision pressed down on her. She realized she was bound now, tied to the Morettas not by money, not even by duty, but by a chain she had chosen. And in choosing, she had stepped fully into Dante Moretti's world. A world of shadows, secrets, and inevitable blood. The Moretti estate was never silent. Even at night, the hum of machines in the security room, the muffled voices of guards on radios, the faint vibration of passing cars on the long driveway filled the air. But tonight, it felt quieter than usual, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Elena sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her phone. She hadn't called anyone from her old life in weeks. Not her study group, not the diner, not even Mrs. Clara D'Souza, her kind neighbor who used to slip her extra bread rolls wrapped in napkins. Every time she thought about it, she imagined eyes on her, ears listening. And now her fear had a name: Victor Salvatore. The knock came just after midnight. She opened the door to find Marco Velez standing there, his expression grim. "Mr. Moretti wants you in the study." Her chest tightened. She followed him down the hall, her steps echoing in the cavernous silence. Inside, Dante stood at his desk, papers scattered across it. One of his men, a tall man with sharp cheekbones, spoke quickly in Italian, pointing to photographs spread out on the polished wood. Elena recognized one instantly. Mrs. D'Souza, watering her plants on the balcony of their old apartment building. Her knees almost gave out. "That's my neighbor." Dante's gaze flicked to her, hard and unyielding. "Yes. Salvatore's men were seen questioning your building this afternoon. They've already pulled your records, your college transcripts, even employment files from the diner." Elena's mouth went dry. "Why? Why would they bother with me?" "Because you're mine now," Dante said bluntly. His voice was low, edged with steel. And he believes everyone in my orbit is leverage. Elena's stomach turned. Leverage to do what? To break me, Dante replied. He tried once before with my wife. He will not hesitate to try again with you. Elena gripped the back of a chair, her knuckles white. Images of Clara flashed in her mind. Her gentle smile. The way she always asked if Elena had eaten. She was innocent. Completely outside of this world. And now she was a target. Then you have to stop him, Elena whispered. Dante's eyes darkened. I will. But understand this, Elena, your old life is gone. Every person you cared about is now a weakness he can exploit. If you stay, they will be shielded. If you go, you condemn them. The words hit her like a slap. She felt trapped, caged in invisible chains. Why me? She demanded suddenly. Her voice cracked, but she didn't care. Why did you drag me into this? You could have chosen anyone to watch Luca. Someone without ties. Someone invisible. Dante's face hardened. Because you don't run. Elena froze. You saw a boy collapsed in the street, he continued, stepping closer, his presence suffocating. Anyone else in that neighborhood would have walked away. But you didn't. You stayed. You wrapped him in your coat. You called me. And when I told you not to move, you obeyed, even though every instinct told you to call an ambulance. That kind of loyalty, unearned, instinctive, is rare. And now it is mine. Elena's throat tightened. She hated him in that moment, for seeing her so clearly, for binding her with words she couldn't fight. And yet, somewhere deep, she knew he was right. She turned away, unable to meet his gaze. So what happens now? Dante's voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of finality. Now you choose. The morning light spilled pale gold through the tall windows of Dante's study, casting long shadows across the marble floor. Elena stood near the fireplace, her arms wrapped around herself as if to shield against the weight of what was coming. Dante sat behind his desk, papers neatly stacked now, his expression calm but unreadable. You have two options, he said. His tone was businesslike, as if he were negotiating a contract instead of her life. Option 1. I give you money, enough to finish your degree anywhere you choose. New York, Paris, London. You disappear. Your ties here are cut. You will never see me or Luca again. Elena's chest tightened at the last words. Never see Luca again. Option 2, Dante continued, you stay. You accept protection for yourself and for the people you still care about. But if you stay, you are bound to this house. To me. There will be no middle ground. The silence stretched heavy. Elena thought of Mrs. D'Souza, of her study group at the library, of the diner where Joe still probably saved her shifts on the schedule just in case. They were all pieces of her old life. Fragile pieces. Pieces Victor Salvatore could crush with a word. She also thought of Luca, his pale face as she caught him on the terrace, his shaky voice when he confessed he wanted a normal life. And of Dante standing in that ballroom, radiating control even as his son nearly collapsed. Her life no longer belonged to her. It belonged to the choices she couldn't unmake. Elena lifted her chin. You already know my answer. Dante's gaze sharpened. Say it. I'll stay, she whispered. For a moment, something flickered in his expression. Not triumph, not satisfaction. Something harder to place. Relief maybe. Or resignation. Good, he said finally. His voice softened almost imperceptibly. Then understand this. From now on you are not alone. Anyone who touches you touches me. Anyone who threatens you will be answered. But you must follow my rules. Elena forced a shaky laugh. You make it sound like a prison. His eyes darkened. No. A fortress. And fortresses keep what's inside alive. She looked at him, then really looked. The sharp lines of his face, the iron in his voice, but also the weight in his eyes. He wasn't just binding her to him, he was binding himself too. The realization both terrified and steadied her. Then I'll follow your rules, Elena said softly. As long as Luke is safe. As long as the people I left behind are safe. Dante inclined his head. Then we understand each other. He stood, moving closer, his presence overwhelming but not cruel. He reached out, not to touch her but to hand her a key. This is to your new office, he said. You will have access to medical supplies, monitors and files you need. Nothing more. The rest of this house remains off limits. Elena took the key, its weight heavier than it should have been. Her choice was made. She wasn't just a nurse anymore. She wasn't just an assistant. She was part of Dante Moretti's world. And there was no way back. The morning began like any other. Quiet, orderly, the Moretti estate running with the precision of a machine. Elena had started to feel the rhythms of the household. Luca grumbling through breakfast, Isabella humming softly while she polished the silver, Marco making his rounds with his ever-watchful eyes. But the calm didn't last. Dante was already in the kitchen when Elena arrived with Luca's glucose monitor. His phone was pressed to his ear, his knuckles white where they gripped the counter. The tension rolling off him was sharp enough to cut glass. "Yes," Dante said curtly. "I'll handle it myself." He ended the call and turned. His expression was carved from stone. "What happened?" Elena asked, her chest tightening. Dante's dark eyes locked on hers. "Mrs. D'Souza. Your neighbor." Elena froze. "What about her?" "She's been taken," Dante said flatly. "Salvatore's men. They're holding her at an abandoned warehouse near the docks." Elena's blood ran cold. She gripped the back of a chair to steady herself. No, she has nothing to do with this. She's just an old woman." "Why would they?" "Because she is connected to you," Dante cut in, his voice sharp. "And through you to me." Elena shook her head violently. "No. You can't just, she can't." Dante stepped closer, his presence filling the room. "Elena. Focus. They expect me to send security to divide my strength. They believe I'll leave Luca vulnerable here. But they don't know me." "You're going yourself?" Elena whispered. "Yes," Dante said. His tone carried no hesitation, only decision. "Then I'm coming with you," she blurted. Dante's eyes narrowed. "No." "Yes," she insisted, her voice shaking but firm. "She's my neighbor. My friend. I can't just sit here while—" "Elena." Dante's voice dropped, low and dangerous. "This is not your world." Her chin lifted even as her knees trembled. "It is now. And you know it." For a long moment they stared at each other. Finally Dante exhaled through his nose, a sound more like surrender than agreement. "Fine," he said. "But you will stay behind me. You will obey without question. If I tell you to run, you run." Elena nodded, her heart hammering. Minutes later they were in a black SUV slicing through the city streets. Dante sat beside her, his coat pulled back just enough to reveal the gleam of a pistol at his hip. His expression was calm, focused, like a man preparing for war. He handed her a small black device, no larger than a car key fob. "A tracker," he said. "If anything happens to me, press this button. My men will come." Elena stared at it, the weight of what he was saying sinking in. "Anything happens to you?" she whispered. His eyes met hers, unreadable. "Then get Mrs. D'Souza out. No matter what." The SUV slowed as they reached the warehouse district. The morning light was pale and thin, making the rusting metal walls look like bones jutting from the ground. The car stopped. Dante pulled a sleek pistol from his coat and checked it with practiced ease. Elena's stomach churned. She had never been this close to violence. Dante glanced at her once, his gaze steady. "Stay close. And remember, fear is a weapon they will use. Don't let them see it." Her breath caught. She nodded. And together they stepped into the lion's den. The air inside the warehouse was heavy with dust, thick enough to coat the back of Elena's throat. Shafts of light slanted through broken windows high above, illuminating rows of rusting machinery and stacked shipping containers. Their footsteps echoed. Every sound seemed amplified, her own breathing, Dante's measured steps, the faint creak of the building settling. They moved deeper into the maze of steel and shadows. Then they found her. Mrs. Clara D'Souza sat tied to a chair in a small office at the far end of the warehouse. Her eyes widened when she saw Elena, tears streaking her wrinkled face. "Elena!" she cried, her voice cracking. Elena rushed forward, dropping to her knees beside her. "Mrs. D'Souza, it's okay, I'm here." Her hands fumbled with the ropes, but Dante's sharp voice cut through the moment. "Elena. Focus." She looked up. His gun was raised, his body tense. Footsteps echoed in the hall outside. More than one set. Many. "Get her untied," Dante ordered, his eyes never leaving the doorway. Elena's fingers shook as she worked the knots. Mrs. D'Souza whimpered softly, But Elena whispered reassurances, though her own heart was slamming against her ribs. The ropes fell away just as shadows moved across the threshold. Armed men. 4, maybe 5, spreading out into the room with the casual menace of wolves circling prey. And then he appeared. Victor Salvatore. He stepped out of the shadows like he owned them, his suit crisp, his smile slow and cruel. He held a pistol casually at his side, but it was his eyes that froze Elena in place. Sharp, hungry, cold. Well, Victor drawled. The infamous Dante Moretti reduced to rescuing old women. How noble. How predictable. Dante didn't flinch. Let her go, Victor. Victor's smile widened. Oh, I will. But not before we have a little chat. His gaze slid to Elena, lingering with unsettling interest. And this must be the girl. The nurse who's become so very important. Blackstone's new weakness. Elena's stomach twisted, but she forced herself to stand straighter, shielding Mrs. D'Souza with her body. Victor chuckled. Brave. Foolish but brave. You won't touch her, Dante said. His voice was quiet, almost calm, but the promise in it was lethal. Victor tilted his head, amused. Won't I? You've hidden your son's condition for years, Dante. But last week I watched as he collapsed like a marionette with cut strings. And now here is this girl, your son's lifeline. And you brought her straight to me. How convenient. Elena's heart pounded, but something inside her steadied. She met Victor's gaze, forcing her voice not to shake. You won't shoot me, she said. Victor raised an eyebrow. No, Elena said firmly. I'm more valuable alive. As leverage. And you won't shoot an old woman either. Even in your world there are lines you don't cross. For the first time Victor hesitated. And in that moment Dante moved. He was a shadow, silent and deadly, his gun raised in a blink. He pressed the barrel to the side of Victor's skull, his presence radiating lethal intent. You kidnapped an innocent woman, Dante said coldly. You threatened my son. You threatened her. His voice dropped lower, each word like a blade. One of those things earns retribution. All 3. That's a death sentence. Victor's men shifted uneasily, their weapons half raised. The air was taut, every second stretched razor-thin. Elena clutched Mrs. D'Souza, her body trembling but her mind locked on a single thought. Don't break. Don't show fear. Dante's finger tightened on the trigger. And Elena knew, the warehouse was about to become a tomb. Time seemed to slow in the warehouse. The gun pressed against Victor Salvatore's temple gleamed in the dim light. Dante's hand was steady, his jaw set, his entire presence radiating lethal calm. Around them Victor's men hovered, caught between loyalty and fear. The air was thick with dust and tension, every heartbeat stretched into eternity. Elena clutched Mrs. D'Souza, holding the trembling woman against her chest. Her own knees shook, but she refused to collapse. She had promised herself she would not show fear, not here, not now. Victor's lips curved in a mocking smile, even with death kissing his skin. If you pull that trigger, Dante, this room will drown in blood. My men won't hesitate. Neither will mine, Dante replied smoothly. His voice was low, deadly. You miscalculated, Victor. You thought you could use an old woman, a nurse, to bait me into weakness. All you've done is sign your own fate. Victor chuckled, though the sound was strained. Ah, but you care, don't you? Look at you. Risking everything for a neighbor girl and her little savior. That's not the Dante Moretti I remember. The Dante I knew never had attachments. He never. Enough, Dante cut him off. His finger tightened on the trigger. Elena's heart pounded. Dante, she whispered hoarsely. Please. For a split second Dante's eyes flicked to her. Just a flicker. Enough for her to see what burned behind them. Not rage but a deep, bone-crushing weariness. A man who had lived too long in shadows. A man who had lost too much. Then he looked back at Victor. You crossed the last line, Dante said quietly. The gunshot cracked through the warehouse, shattering the moment. Victor's body slumped, his blood blooming across the concrete floor. Chaos erupted. Victor's men raised their weapons, but the sound of gunfire outside the warehouse cut through the noise. Moretti reinforcements poured in, shadows moving with deadly precision. Dante's soldiers had been waiting, surrounding the building, striking with ruthless efficiency. Elena ducked, shielding Mrs. D'Souza, her ears ringing from the echo of gunfire. The clash was brutal but brief. Within minutes, Victor's men were disarmed, some dead, others dragged to their knees. Silence returned, heavy and suffocating. The warehouse smelled of cordite and blood. Dante lowered his gun, his suit spattered with red. His face was unreadable, his breathing steady as though he had simply finished a piece of business. He walked toward Elena. She stared up at him, her heart slamming against her ribs. You killed him. Yes, Dante said flatly. And I'd do it again. There was no apology in his tone. No hesitation. Just fact. Elena's hands trembled as she held on to Mrs. D'Souza. She wanted to recoil, to scream, to say she couldn't be part of this. But another part of her, deeper, quieter, knew this was always who Dante was. The man who built fortresses out of stone and fear. The man who would burn the world to protect his son. Dante looked down at her, his eyes dark, unreadable. Take her to the car, he ordered his men. Now. Mrs. D'Souza was guided away, still shaking but alive. Elena stood slowly, her body weak, her mind spinning. She met Dante's gaze, her voice barely a whisper. What does this make us? His expression didn't change. Alive. And with that he turned and walked out of the warehouse, leaving Elena to follow, her heart torn between terror and a strange, undeniable loyalty. The drive back to the Moretti estate was silent. Mrs. D'Souza had been taken to a private clinic under guard, safe at last. Luca was still at the mansion, unaware of how close death had brushed past them all. Elena sat in the SUV beside Dante, the city lights flickering across his face. His hands rested on his knees, but every muscle in his body was taut, controlled like a predator waiting for the next strike. She wanted to speak, but the words stuck in her throat. When they finally arrived at the mansion, Dante dismissed his men with a sharp gesture. He carried himself straight to his study, not looking back to see if Elena followed. But she did. Inside, the room was dim, lit only by the glow of the fireplace. Dante stood by the mantel, his back to her, his posture rigid. For a long time neither of them spoke. Finally, Elena broke the silence. You could have let him take me. Her voice was soft but firm. It would have been the logical choice. Protect Luca. Sacrifice the nurse. That's how your world works, isn't it? Dante turned slowly, his dark eyes burning. He stepped closer, each movement deliberate, until he stood in front of her. Yes, he said quietly. That is how my world works. But not with you. Elena's breath caught. Why? For the first time since she had met him, Dante looked vulnerable. His gaze softened, his voice roughened. Because you showed me there's more to strength than power, he said. The night you found my son, you didn't think of yourself. You didn't think of what it would cost you. You just stopped for a stranger when no one else would. That kind of courage, it's worth protecting. His words pressed against her chest, sinking deep. He lifted a hand slowly as if giving her time to refuse and cupped her cheek. His thumb traced the line of her jaw, the touch surprisingly gentle for a man who had just executed his enemy hours before. Stay, Dante whispered. The word was both a command and a plea. Not as Luca's nurse. Not as my employee. Stay because this house hasn't felt like a home until you were in it. Elena's heart pounded. She thought of her old life. The diner, the rent notices, the endless struggle. She thought of Luca, vulnerable yet stubborn, the boy who trusted her more than he admitted. And she thought of Dante, a man forged in shadows, offering her a place beside him not with promises of peace, but with the truth of what he was. Terrified her. And yet it drew her closer. Her voice shook as she answered. You don't know what you're asking. Yes, I do, Dante said softly. I'm asking you to choose me. This world. This family. And I will give you my word. Anyone who threatens you, anyone who dares to touch you will face me. Tears burned Elena's eyes, though she didn't let them fall. She nodded, her throat too tight for words. Dante's hand lingered on her cheek a moment longer, then dropped away. He turned back toward the fire, his silhouette sharp against the flames. You've made your decision, he said quietly. From this moment on you are no longer a guest here, Elena. You are Moretti. The words settled over her like a brand. Heavy. Final. And though fear still coiled in her chest, another feeling rose beneath it. Belonging. And that's where we leave Elena and Dante tonight. But their story is far from over. If you were drawn into the shadows of the Moretti world, Make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because you won't want to miss the next chapter when it drops. Leave a comment below. Do you think Elena made the right choice? Should she have walked away? Or was she destined to become a more Etty? Your likes, shares, and comments keep this story alive, so tap that like button to show some love. And join me next time as we step even deeper into this world of power, betrayal, and blood.